Trump said he wanted pro-life judges on the bench. I mean, he's saying the quiet part out loud. So when you then say these judges, are they partisan or not, it just, you know, kind of scratches one's head. Mark, I know that you report on the court. Has polarization and politicization gotten worse in the last few years? How common is it for justices like what we just saw speak out in moments like this?
I absolutely think it's gotten worse, and a big part of that is that the court has lurched far to the right. We now have a 6-3 conservative supermajority that has been willing not only to drag the law to the right, but to do so in very alarming, underhanded, and anti-transparent ways. The conservative majority's abuse of the shadow docket to overhaul the law in a direction that the Republican Party prefers has been raising alarm bells all across the legal profession for years. Finally, I think regular people are starting to see what's happening here. But when the Supreme Court can overturn Roe v. Wade effectively in the middle of the night in a one-paragraph order with virtually no reasoning, we know there's a problem, and it's not the media doing our best to figure out what this opaque, cryptic single paragraph ending a woman's right to choose could possibly mean. So I think that Amy Coney Barrett and Clarence Thomas clearly need to look in the mirror and do some soul searching if they're trying to figure out how the court became so politicized. They are the ones who are breaking all of the court's rules, who are violating decades, if not centuries, of institutional precedent in order to change the law on abortion, on religious liberty, on every issue Republicans care about in the middle of the night through the shadow docket.
So, John, can we track this all back to Senator McConnell playing politics with Obama's confirmations, or is there something else here to blame? Is there more than one person to blame in how we got here?
I mean, in the modern era, or the very modern era, you can look back at that moment. It's certainly a big moment, right? He says, we're not going to let you, nominate anybody. We're not going to even hear from them. Merrick Garland doesn't get a hearing, and there's certainly anger on the side of the Democrats, Merrick Garland, now the Attorney General. But this really goes back a lot longer than that. And there are ideological battles at times that are less partisan in terms of which party is appointed a justice, and there are moments where it's more partisan in terms of that. But basically, you've had a conservative, liberal back and forth on the court for generations. We're living through a time now where a lot of these decisions are very big and momentous, and in particular with regard to the Texas abortion law, the law of the land for the last 50 years or so, almost 50 years, has been Roe versus Wade, and we're going to see a real test to that. Not just what we saw in the last couple of weeks, but over the coming months.
Mark, let's elaborate on what you said earlier about the end of Roe versus Wade, because after the Supreme Court refused to block that Texas abortion ban, you wrote a piece titled, "Of course, this Supreme Court ended Roe versus Wade by doing nothing." Explain what makes this Supreme Court so different from others and what it means for the future of Roe versus Wade.
So the hallmark of the current conservative majority is making huge moves, dramatically and radically altering the law, while pretending to be doing almost nothing at all. We saw this over and over again in the most recent term, the first term with Amy Coney Barrett, where the majority would overturn decades of precedent and lie about it and claim otherwise. The conservative majority restored juvenile life without parole and claimed that it wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary, that it wasn't changing any law at all. The conservative majority overhauled religious liberty to strike down a huge number of COVID restrictions and said, oh, we're just applying the precedent we've always been applying. They are doing this stuff and lying about it to the media, to our faces, to the American people. And that is what happened with Roe. That's why I wrote that piece. It was not surprising because this is a majority that has shown itself willing to just tell untruths all the time. Of course, the 5 ultra-conservatives could have come out with a decision in the middle of the night saying, we don't believe in Roe, we won't abide by it, and we're overturning it. But that would take courage and candor, and that's something that this majority lacks. So instead, the court waits 24 hours after the law has already taken effect and then issues this one-paragraph order saying essentially nothing. Oh, these brilliant Texas conservatives have tricked the Supreme Court and there's nothing we can do about it. That is so obviously a lie And I think it's an insult to the American people.
Yeah, and there are definitely a few more cases that are making their way up to the courts that are going to be closely watched. Danielle, quick question. Democrats, they've proposed many solutions to this problem, some expanding the court, for example. Others said add term limits so these appointments are not for life. Where do you see these proposals going? Can they come fast enough? Are they likely to die?
You know what I'd love? I'd love for the Democrats to stop proposing things and actually start doing things. That would be shocking and incredible. The reality is that we're not going to see an expansion of anything until we have the two Democrats in the Senate that act like Republicans actually function in this democracy and want to see progress. And so until we see that, everything that we're saying is just a wish list.
All right, Danielle Moody, John Allen, and completely free. Oh, Mark Joseph Stern. Sorry about that, Mark. I just wanted to make sure I get it right. As somebody who has a very complicated last name, I did not want to screw yours up. Appreciate it. Coming up, the Pentagon admitted that the August 29th drone strike targeting terrorists in Kabul mistakenly killed innocent civilians. Now the relatives of 10 Afghans killed are calling for punishment and compensation over their deaths. We're going to discuss this when we come right back.